So I'm going to cover the part which is related to how to migrate different kind of workloads, not only to AWS, but maybe to some other type of clouds, some other environment, or maybe to some other. VMware has something called VMware Cloud Partner Program, where we have like 4,500 different cloud providers globally, and the tool which I'm going to cover is also something which can be used to migrate the type of workloads to any of those VCPP providers. So why do we speak about this? Because often planning some kind of migration, we see a lot of constraints, a lot of limitations, having in mind that we need to check what is the version from one site where we are going to migrate, what version of software or hardware we're going to use, to see what is the network between different sites, so how we can outcome and step across the different networks which we're going to use in different environments. We need to worry about the application dependency, about the downtime which we maybe need to plan for this kind of some kind of migration. And then this is directly related to the business disruption, because all those downtimes at the end lead to some lost profit or some services unavailable, etc. So VMware was doing a lot of work in this part, and there is a solution which was, well, it's not quite new. It was something which was used already a couple of years ago for those VCPP providers. It was called Hybrid Connect. Now we rebranded the solution, and we now call it HCX. And it's not only rebranded, but we added some additional functionalities, well, a lot of different functionalities. And basically, and mostly, the solution itself is used to provide simple option, simple path between some on-prem environment, where we have some legacy VMware environment running on vSphere, some old version or something like that, and we want to migrate to VMC, VMware Cloud on AWS, or we want to migrate to some new different cloud or some new on-prem data center. So this is where we are using HCX itself. It provides complete abstraction about the layer which is below the VMs and the application itself. So we are not focusing, we don't need to worry what version of, for example, VMware we are running on different sites, what version of hardware we are using on different sites. For everyone who has experience with VMware, if you want to, for example, to combine different CPU editions, you need also to worry about the version of CPU. With HCX, you don't need to worry about it anymore. So you don't need to reconfigure new cluster and set up all the limitation of new cluster of the CPUs, because you are migrating from some Skylake or Broadwell version or Haswell version of CPU or something like that. So this is what we are doing all with HCX. Also together, part of the solution is, let's say, option to stretch the network across the sites, to provide easy option to move the data across the sites also, to keep the same IP addresses, to keep the same MAC addresses also, and also for this process of migration to utilize the duplication compression, but also encryption, because we are moving the data across some internet link or something like that. So we really want to be sure that all the data is protected while we perform this kind of migration also. So this is everything what we do with HCX, and we'll see later on the slides also what are the different options, how we can move the data. Do we want to do it offline? Do we want to do it online? What kind of, let's say, options do we have in terms of what do we want to change with VMs, which we are moving from one site to another, etc. So all of those are the pieces which we put in solution and features which we push to the HCX. And HCX, as I mentioned, it's completely separate product available from VMware, something which is for some time already on the market itself, and it can be always utilized, for example, only for some amount of time. So you don't need to purchase like a perpetual license or something like that. You will just rent it for a couple of months until you finish the project of migration, and done. You don't need to pay it all the time or something like that. So what we use it? We use firstly to migrate from some legacy data center to some new kind of environment. We call it vCloud Foundation, where we combine compute virtualization, storage virtualization, and network virtualization. So these are full stack for software-defined data center. Or you want to extend the environment also to some AWS, so VMC on the AWS, or some other type of cloud. As I mentioned, currently there are all different type of public clouds which we support for sure, and not only with the public cloud, but also those 4,500 different VCPP providers where users can easily migrate their workloads and continue to run. I know that in the audience there are some of VCPP providers, so this is also a tool which can be interesting for them for sure. So for all of those cases, HCX is something which can be utilized to migrate all of those different workloads, or even to provide some kind of, let's say, move between the sites and then provide additional option to move to the cloud for sure also. So what are the use cases? Modernization is one of those. So migration from the legacy equipment, legacy data center to some new equipment. And for all different projects in the past, you need to think about the version of CPUs, the version of the version of vSphere, for example. All those were some kind of limitations how we can migrate most efficiently. So now with HCX we can do it without no business impact, with automatic VM transformation, so that we can, during the process of migration, we will perform the upgrade of virtual hardware, we will change all the CPU instructions which are loaded into the VMs, of course, and also to keep IP addressing scheme as it was on the primary site. So don't need to change all IP addresses and think about networking or something like that. So this is one of the use cases. Second one, which is tightly related to the AWS for sure, is option to migrate to VMC. So in VMC, I don't know how many of you was maybe listening yesterday, my colleague was presenting also about VMC. So VMC is VMware running in AWS. So it's literally the same vSphere, vCenter, all those services and components which customers have on-prem data center, all of those are running in AWS data center. So from that side, we can easily then utilize HCX also to move complete workload from the customer on-prem data center to, let's say, VMC, and then use it also for to migrate then for some DR site or something like that. So this is an additional option which we can provide, so you can use it also to push it from the cloud to some on-prem data center, because anyhow it's going bi-directional. So you can choose, do you want to go from cloud to on-prem or from on-prem to the cloud? So there are various services which are running there also, and as I mentioned also, the network part is also pretty much important. Together with this L2 network extension and stretching the network between the sites, and also option to provide WAN optimization and deduplication and compression for all the data which we are sending across the network between the sites. Latestly, in just end of August, we announced some new features for HCX. One of those is also support for non-vSphere bulk migration. What this means that we can now utilize HCX to migrate some workflow from Red Hat KVM or Microsoft Hyper-V VMs and migrate all of those to vSphere on-prem or to migrate to VMC in AWS. So this is also something which is now supported, so for non-vSphere workload. For large-scale live migration, we combine now an option which is the solution which combine vMotion, so standard vMotion between the ESX host, what most of the customers doing every day, together with vSphere replication in order to provide more easier, simplified way to replicate and migrate huge amount of data and huge amount of VMs. And in the same time, well, it has zero downtime. It's always, there will be, let's say, short switch in the moment when you want to shut down the VM on the primary site and power on the VM on the secondary site itself. And for sure, advanced disaster recovery options where we integrate HCX with this replication together with our solution which is called Site Recovery Manager, which automated the process of failover and failback of the VMs between the sites. So this is how you can, with single press on the button inside of the GUI, we can shut down complete primary site, power on everything on the DR site, and we see also nice use case using of this for testing purposes, because there is we can run this in a test in an isolated environment where we will power on all the VMs in isolated network and check is everything okay with our DR site for testing purposes, or for, we see it also often for audit, so that you just need to comply with some requirements that every 6 months you are testing your DR services. So speaking about the different option about the migration, so for sure there is cold migration. We will just copy the VMs between the sites. So it's for sure it will be for while VMs are offline, but all other options are available that we can perform all the type of migration while the VMs are still up and running, so without the need to shut down the VMs on the primary site in that case. So we can utilize HCX vMotion, which is the, let's say, the same engine of the vMotion which we use to migrate, to move the VM between ESX host on-prem. We are using the same approach to migrate the VM between the sites. There is a nice video on YouTube where one of my colleagues from VMware was testing HCX vMotion between the States and Europe, and there was no single drop in ping or something like that. After the result, after the vMotion was finished, the only latency on the ping was higher because it was not pinging any more VM which is running in the States, but now something VM is running in the Europe. Anything else, so without any downtime, lost packet or something like that. HCX bulk is an option to combine vMotion together with replication. With HCL bulk, we are doing, let's say, the option that we are creating the snapshots of the VMs and then replicating those snapshots to our DR or remote site or VMC, whatever, and then we are powering on virtual machine on this side. OS assisted replication is something which we are doing for this non-vSphere workload, where we need to sometimes, in some cases, to install a piece of software on the machine itself and then perform migration of this VM. It is, let's say, an option like maybe 10 years ago we were using to convert physical machine to virtual. And now we are using the same approach to move workload from non-vSphere environment to vSphere or VMC. Also, replicated assisted vMotion is combination of vMotion, HCX vMotion, and vSphere replication, where we are replicating the data in the background. When everything is replicated, we are now able to freeze a VM on the primary site, copy the delta and power on and continue the operations of the VM, on the application on the remote site where we are moving our workload. So this is all can be done in live without the need to shut down VMs or to have any kind of downtime in that case. For sure, all of those processes can be scheduled, and HCX provides a scheduling tool where you can schedule how many of VMs you want to transfer in one moment and how you, for example, you don't need to sit there all the time and waiting for something to finish, but you will just schedule after something is replicated, after some amount of time during the night or something like that, when the load is small, just migrate the VM. vMotion capabilities, as I mentioned, one of the options which we are using to move easily VM between the site. What in general we use, because for example, if you imagine that we have on-prem site and some VMC in cloud, we will put in the between, there is a proxy, which is in which all the VMs see this proxy as an additional ESX server. So when we're performing this HCX vMotion, it is like we are moving the VM, all the memory details, CPU instruction from the on-prem ESX server to this virtual proxy ESX server, then copy all the data across the link, send it to the cloud or some other site, and then power on and move those instructions to the VM which we are building on the remote site. In this case, we don't need to worry about different version of CPU, for example, about EVC mode. We don't need to take care about that. We support also for all the versions above vSphere 5.5. It is supported to do this, so we can also easily migrate workload for some legacy environment, for example. And it provides a lot of benefits comparing to standard cross vCenter vMotion, because in this case we don't need to think about this 150 milliseconds round trip time for vMotion, which we have for standard cross vCenter vMotion, because HCX provide support really higher amount of latency. And also we still see a lot of customers using, for example, third-party with distributed switches in vSphere environment, which is not supported for some time already. And with HCX, for sure, we can also migrate this kind of workload between the different environments. So this is, for example, for vMotion. For bulk migration, where I said that we are replicating the snapshots of the VMs, we even can utilize it for even older version of vSphere, so until from the version 5.0 and above. So really, all type of machines can be migrated, and also we will extend the network so that we don't need to think about how to remap all the data, all the virtual machines, to change IP addresses, MAC addresses. Everything can be kept, and we can, in the same time, we can move from different CPU versions, and in the same approach, upgrade virtual hardware, for example, inside of the virtual machine. So it's really provide a simple way to migrate from any kind of, let's say, on-prem or legacy environment to some new environment on VMC in the AWS. Assisted migration is something which we are doing and using for non-vSphere workload. So where we are putting the agent inside of the VM, which is running, for example, on KVM or Hyper-V, and then we are replicating all the data. When everything is replicated, we'll just, let's say, shut down the VM on this old hypervisor, for example, power on VM inside of our new SDDC data center, and we have everything prepared. And in the same time, we will the solution itself, we will think about the virtual hardware which need to be configured. We can keep the IP address scheme also in the same time, so we can easily do the switch over from some other non-vSphere environment to vSphere on our new SDDC environment itself. This is how the architecture, for example, of the solution looks like. So there are different components inside of the solution which we have between the sites. On the, let's say, destination side, as I mentioned, it can be whatever you want. It can be some new data center or some new environment in the existing data center. It can be cloud, AWS, or some other public cloud available. So we can all easily integrate and move the workload, no matter what is our goal and what we want to achieve, only depending, for example, to plan what kind of latency maybe we can expect on our link, what is the bandwidth, and how much of the data which we need to move and migrate across the links. For sure, and this part related to the network is really important, that we don't need to worry about the network. HCX itself will provide this L2 stretch across the network, which will be utilized for this data migration itself in this case. So this is how we can easily then create and replicate the environment. Once we are moved to a new environment, and hopefully, let's say, it's VMC, now we need to think about and worry how we should, let's say, organize our environment, cloud environments, how we are consuming all the resources which we have in our environments. So what are the true costs to get some kind of predictions, how our workload is running inside of some different cloud environments. So it doesn't need to mean that we have only one cloud environment, but we can run some workload in AWS, something on prem, something in IBM Cloud, or whatever you want, for example. So there is, let's say, really tough situation that we need now to have a tool to cover all of those different clouds and to manage resources which we are utilizing across all of those. VMware is heavily also working on this part, so we have two solutions which are utilized to, let's say, to monitor all the consumption in the different cloud environments, but also we are monitoring all the applications on-prem or in cloud, so no matter what kind of applications you are running in your environment. One solution is called Cloud Health, which is, let's say, the tool which we are using to monitor all the consumption on the various cloud environments which we are creating. The other solution is called Wavefront, and it is used mostly to monitor the application itself which are running on those various cloud environments. And those two tools can be combined also, so that from Cloud Health you get all the cost management, cost governance, so you really know what is your spending in all different cloud environments. You can use it also for planning about based on the information which you get from the Wavefront about the performance, how the applications are scaling, growing, so you can predict how in the future all the costs will look like. And from the other side, with Wavefront, we have the agents which are communicating with the various type of application, no matter on-prem or in cloud, and collecting all the performance data analytics, so that you all the time you know really how the application are really working inside of those different environments. With this, I'm finishing my slides. Just would like to add one more also additional comment. We had previously our colleague from Ingemark talking about PKS. I will ask you also, for all of yours who are interested in PKS in Kubernetes, just to search on Google VMware Project Pacific. So this is something which we just announced in VMworld in States, end of August. And Project Pacific is something where we are going towards, and something which will be, it's already tech preview. And it's, let's say, a future of virtualization, let's say, where we are creating a new version of vSphere, where we, in the same time, can run directly all the various different VMs, but also it will natively support Kubernetes running directly on the vSphere itself. So, or microservices and containers running directly on the vSphere itself. So this is something which we expect during the next year to be publicly available, but now it's already available as a technical preview. It's something for all of you who are interested in Kubernetes and to containers. Just take a look on that one.